Hi. So this is a video to give a quick overview of my homemade HF software defined receiver. It's based on an STM32F429 discovery board from ST Micro Devices, and this has an ARM Cortex M4 processor with hardware floating point and an LCD controller. The receiver is a G0ETP's design, and it has a DDS local oscillator, a 24-bit ADC, delivering I and Q signals at 25 kilosamples per second to the processor. This results in a spectrum scope span of 25 kilohertz, the centre of which is marked by this green line on the waterfall display. I've written the software entirely from scratch to satisfy my desire to have a very good signal processing performance and also a user interface that's very responsive and attractive but is not overly cluttered. And all components of this user interface are updating at 30 frames per second. So we've got a highly accurate signal meter at the top. That is good to within a dB across the entire dynamic range of the receiver. There's also a numerical readout of dBm here. The frequency display has a little marker under the decimal point here, and this shows the currently selected tuning step. So this is in upper sideband mode, and it's currently set to tune in 500 Hz steps, which I find personally best for SSB, particularly now most people have an accurate transmit frequency reference. So it's very quick to just tune into SSB stations. So that's set to 500 Hz. If I use the step button, that goes to 1 kHz steps, 10 kHz steps, 10 Hz steps, which I rarely use, but it's handy if an SSB station is slightly off frequency, and then back to 100 Hz. So we've got a VFO button here, and that switches between the two VFOs. Very conventional operation. And if you hold this button, then it will copy the current VFO through to the other one. We've got a mode button here. This cycles through the modes upper sideband, lower sideband, and CW. Upper, lower, and CW. If you look at the waterfall display, we can see that the extents of the DSP passband are accurately marked by a pair of purple lines. See, that's showing 0 to plus about 2.8 kHz for upper sideband, 0 downwards for lower sideband, and then in CW mode, centered around 700 Hz, we have the lines denoting around a 250 Hz CW filter bandwidth. So we just pop down to the CW section for a moment. Change the step size to 100. So we have a display button here, and that cycles through the display modes, bottom half of the screen, that are appropriate to the currently selected mode. So this is the waterfall display. If you press that again in CW, we get a CW decode text screen. And if we flick again, we get through to a real-time FFT display mode. This is useful to see. This is a logarithmic display covering the full dynamic range of the receiver, so about 100 dBs. So it's useful to see the absolute strength of stations can be useful for tuning in things like CW, but to be honest, the Waterfall Display is pretty much the one that gets all the use. It gives you good situational awareness, and it's very quick to find a station and tune into it. So that's pretty much it for the VFO, mode, display and step buttons. Finally, we've got a shaft encoder here for controlling access to the configuration menu. So if I just press that, it just shows us where we are. If I press that again, we can go down the various options we have. So I can control the AGC gain, which is my equivalent to RF gain. There's a normal wide mode that applies to all modes, AM, FM, CW and SSB. There's an IF shift. The waterfall bias is something that rarely needs attention, because what I've done, I've linked effectively the RF gain control to the offset on the colours used in the waterfall. So we can see here that's got a nice blue background, so it's set just below where the current band noise floor is. If I go back to the RF gain setting, so if I raise the gain, you see the whole noise level comes up. That hasn't done anything to the volume of the signal we're listening to, it's just raised the sensitivity of the receiver and also the sensitivity of the waterfall display. Similarly, if we deafen it down, you can still see the signals there, but the noise is very much depressed. So a few more things on the menu. Whether you want the horizontal scroll of the FFT enabled, I like it on, so as we tune, the signals track rather than smearing, which I don't like, so this is quite pleasant to tune. Some settings there to do with the impulse noise recovery of the AGC. The DDS reference multiplier, you can change that if you do run into any spurs that are as a result of the DDS local oscillator, then that can be used to avoid them, but in most cases you don't run into spurs within the amateur bands. We've got FM de-emphasis on or off. To be honest, you need that on all the time for FM demodulation, and then just the code version at the bottom. So that's it for the configuration menu, and I leave it in RF gain mode all the time, so during normal operation a quick tweak of the menu knob will adjust the RF gain. So overall, the performance of this receiver I think is exceptional for the money, the cost of components. The adjacent channel performance is superb. The filters that I'm using have an 80 dB stop band, which is very, very, very strong rejection of signals either side. The bass response of the receiver is very good because of the steep skirts on the SSB filter. You can place the VFO position quite close to, well, it's around 100 Hertz away from zero, so that's a very good bass response. And the AGC, I've put quite a bit of effort into the AGC, so it's got no overshoot on strong or sudden signals and more signals, and also, as I've mentioned before, it's got a recovery from impulse noise, which otherwise can force the AGC right up, and then you might have a 1 or 2 second recovery from that. So this doesn't suffer from that at all. So it's nearly done. A few features to add, like non-volatile storage of parameters, but I've been using this as a daily receiver since Christmas. There are very few things missing from my point of view. Things still to add are a notch filter and possibly an RTTY decoder, but that's pretty much it. Hope you enjoyed watching.